engineers are the mental processor that have to solve the most complex problems. Yes, these will help us commoditize things, but we absolutely have to learn what they're doing under the hood. And we have to understand what they're doing for us automatically before we just take it on, or you miss out on those crucial learning experiences that you understand what's happening.
Would you say the same about a junior engineer using Java and not having a clue on how memory management works?
That's a good question. I would say,
Russ, okay. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah, as good as I can be. So we're in the sunny state of South Carolina, and it's raining and storming. Yeah. How about you?
I mean, we're in the sunny country of Ireland, so
yeah, feels like home, right? So there you go.
I wanted to ask you to maybe introduce yourself before we start.
Yeah. So I'm Russ Schampers. I'm a senior solutions engineer is the title at my company. We're just going to say an engineer, make it real simple. Been in the field for about 15 years, got my degree. Boy, we started that journey almost 20 years ago now. Woo, feeling old. All right, awesome. So yeah, I've worked, I work at a Fortune 500 insurance company. I've worked in various domains within that. And also tried roles like being an architect and things like that for a couple of years. Didn't really jive with me as much as I like the engineering family. So back to home. So that's me from a work perspective.
Well, I'm very glad to have you on this first episode. To jump straight into the topic, have you had the chance to try GPT 3.5, 4?
Yeah,
what your thoughts
I
are?
have one experience that we shared in the family, but yeah, I've given it a whirl. I can share one experience. By the way, I just want to let you know, repping your island right here. That's my mug, so represent. Yeah, I played with it a little bit.
And what are your thoughts?
I think it's really impressive from the NL perspective. I'll say that. I do think ChatGPT is really, really good about processing the cluster that is the English language. So it's impressive from that perspective for sure. So, just little fun activities like, hey, tell me a story, write me a 1,000-word story about X kind of a thing. I mean, it really does a great job of understanding what people are saying, and it does a very good job of answering back in a very complicated language with a lot of idiosyncrasies. So I'll say that. I think ChatGPT is really good about that, the NL portion. Yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. Good step forward.
And how do you feel about people calling it an AI?
This is a trigger warning for me. Yeah, so okay, so this is a little bit about me. I struggle with this technology being called AI. I do struggle with a lot of technologies being called AI. I do think that term has, boy, if I could be so bold, I feel that it's lost its meaning over the last 5 years. I just feel like everything is AI these days is kind of the feeling that I get. And I think maybe at some point what we could do is kind of just chat through, whose definition of AI, because I think we really are at a point in this field where there's a high variance of that. But from my perspective, it's a long shot away from being considered AI. ML, I'm cool with, considering an ML package. I'm fine with that. Machine learning, right? So here's the problem with NGs, right? We throw around acronyms all the time, but I also struggle with ML being considered, a part of AI, but I can at least see that correlation. I can at least see it like, okay, yeah, it's kind of under the hood of AI, but for me, so I'll cut to the chase. For me, I think something that's important when we start talking about AI is the ability for the algorithm to learn. I actually put on the perspective of being the algo. And when I think about that algorithm, I want to see that out. I should be careful here. I don't actually want to see this, by the way. It makes me nervous. But if the algorithm could actually mutate itself, right? That's something I start to think about being AI, because that algorithm is now learning and mutating itself. That's something we as humans do, right? When we learn new things, again, if we're receptive human beings, we'll mutate ourselves and learn things and change the way that we process. I don't see that yet. ML provides us a really high level window into that. It's based on this data set. The algorithm is coded from the beginning to make slight alterations based on that data set, right? So that's my kind of view of AI. That being said, since it's so good at NL, could it pass the Turing test? Maybe, right? If we go way back to the early days and like Turing's definition of AI, would a human observer be able to tell the difference between the two? I don't know. Maybe we should give it a whirl. Put Hazem on one side. So I'll tell you what, I'll be the tester. We'll have Hazem on one side, right? And we'll have ChatGPT answering my questions on the other side. And then we could, maybe that's a future episode. I could see if I can tell the difference between you two.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But regardless of definitions, it is getting seriously good at doing the simple programming tasks you might throw at a junior software engineer. And I guess the good question here is, do you think it is at this stage where if Russ is to start his startup tomorrow and you would like to hire, let's say, 2 senior devs, 1 junior, or what you can do is you can hire the 2 senior devs, save the 45, 50K that you pay to the junior, and give GPT access to your GitHub repositories and let the developers use it every day and become the senior devs, become super senior devs. Because companies pay juniors to learn.
Yeah.
They're not paying them to, they produce crappy code every now and then. I'm not sure. I was a junior.
Let me work for you. No, I'm just joking. I'm just ripping. So I'm just ripping on folks. I will say I absolutely support the learning process, right? It's really good. Yeah.
Trying to be politically correct here.
And then I just bash it apart. That's my role here. You're welcome.
Look, I was not very long ago a junior engineer, and firsthand how many hours you had to spend educating me.
So here's what I'll say. So I'm going to backpedal politically as well. So let me take a political backstep. Here's what I actually meant by that statement. I actually think there's 2 different classes of junior engineers, and I think the problematic ones that create the poor code, it depends completely on their actual perspective, right? So there's the ones that come in with an attitude and they're kind of cocky and overconfident, and I just came out of college, I just got my degree, I know everything, I've got this I know all the whiz bang kind of stuff, and then they just start banging out some code, shipping it, and off they go. And then you've got the humble perspective where you've got the engineers who are straight out of college and they're like, wow, I still have so much to learn. They're listening to feedback. They want to make changes. There's 2 different people there. So I'm talking more about these folks are kind of in that problematic camp, is when they, they feel like they're already ready to just rip that code right to prod, So anyways, I'll get us on topic here. So here's what I think ChatGPT could do. And then let's decide if that replaces a junior engineer, right? So some things I've seen ChatGPT do well with is simple requests. So forgive me for saying simple. I don't mean any, nothing against ChatGPT, but the examples that I've seen were more things like, hey, ChatGPT, can you give me a single page app with a login screen for React Native or something like that, right? Those are examples I've seen it do well with. That's something of that, minuscule scope I think it can create. I have not personally seen any examples, and maybe this is some time to share. I haven't seen any examples of ChatGPT being able to create anything I would consider complex. And that's where I think this technology is going to fall down and break. And so I think with software, any project you work on of any type of complexity, you see this evolution, right? You start off coding, everything's super simple. Yep, we're going to build this. Yep, we're going to build that. Get 6 months down the road where you add enough requirements onto it, and we all kind of know the complexity of that application ramps up exponentially, right? And I think that's the problem, if you could view it as a problem. I don't. I think that's why we exist, and that's why we're here. It's our job to deal with that complexity and turn it into working code. But I think that's where tools like ChatGPT and other types of technologies are just going to fall short, is that I think they're going to be excellent at the simplistic solutions. I really don't see them being able to take a huge set of requirements and saying, build me this, right? Because each of those components need to interact with each other in unique ways. And the more that you add more and more requirements, I don't think it's going to happen, right? So if we kind of tie that back into, does it replace a junior engineer? Maybe. I would maybe put on a different perspective that I don't think it replaces the junior engineer. I think what it does is it's a tool that all engineers use to their advantage to commoditize the simpler problems and kind of put that in everybody's back pocket to say, no, don't waste your time doing this simplistic type of thing. Use your thought power and your brain power solving these other complex problems. That's my view of it. I see it more of an assistance tool where, just like other technologies we've seen in the past, I can jump into some if you want. This pattern is not new for me. I'm just going to say that you're in this industry long enough. You're going to see this every handful of years. The new whiz bang comes out. People get all excited. Oh my goodness, is this going to do this? Is this going to do that? This is just, I think, another step in that stepping stone of commoditizing the very simplistic solutions. So I'll open it up. I'm happy to be challenged. Have you seen? I got a question back for you. Have you seen ChatGPT solving anything you would consider a little bit more complex, or anything, a little bit more difficult? Have you seen it utilized in that type of pattern at all?
Well, the problem is the complex projects that I work on are proprietary. I'm not going to share proprietary code with it. And I don't have any pet projects or any personal projects that are complex enough to test it. I am not aware of it being able to do that. I have made videos of GPT generating a backend in Spring Boot, front end that is in Xamarin, cross-platform, and I generated 3 apps in 1 hour. And you could just go ahead and deploy them. And that was simple enough. It was just a simple weather app hitting an API. And assuming any rate of improvement, if we are to continue training this thing, and if we are to... Now, Microsoft releases, so they've had Copilot with GitHub that was quite limited, and now they've released, or haven't released yet, but they've announced CopilotX, which integrates and reads your entire context, your entire code base. It integrates within the IDE, so you're no longer copying snippets, putting them in the ChatGPT prompt, and it has no idea what the global context is. So, and I don't believe corporations are going to trust this. I think the ability is there, but the trust is not there yet. So I feel like startups will adopt this technology first because they're just so desperate to save money. And once this thing integrates with your internal documents, your Confluence pages, or whatever alternative solution Microsoft has, they say it's going to join the meeting on your behalf and summarize it when you have a dental appointment. I think this thing is just going to sit and listen to what Russ is saying, Hazem is saying, and learn everything that you do and build it in this, I think they call it graph database that is, you know how when you talk to ChatGPT, it has the context, and then you can pick up on the context in a week or two and then continue chatting. So this is like that on steroids. It has all the context, access to your, if your repositories, your code bases are on GitHub, it has access to all of that. And then it's just going to learn everything. And people like Scrum Masters, the role is is mostly communication based, and they need some understanding, but not very deep technical understanding of the ticket. They just need to understand enough, and they need to understand enough about Russ. Maybe Russ is a good embedded systems engineer. I am a good backend engineer, and then they need to know how to route the tasks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So people like this might be replaced. I mean, do you agree? Do you disagree? And then once startups adopt this technology and start accelerating their progress, then big corporations are going to start looking around and saying, are we missing out? And then, a few years in, the trust is built, assuming no major data leaks or whatever happen. And privacy-wise, security-wise, everything checks out. Then these big corporations are going to start adopting this technology. And then the question is, are we going to see a massive wave of layoffs happening because this thing I mean, not just software developers. I mean, if you think about it, if you had a PO per, I don't know, 4 or 5 teams, now you might need a PO for 11 teams because most of the work is automated. Scrum Master that can barely handle 1 or 2 teams can now handle 10 teams.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. So I think, lots to unpack there. So, and remind me to come back around at the end to, I think, the first thing that you mentioned with Copilot. So let's touch on that, but I'll go by what's cashed most locally here. I'll kind of pop the stack and go from top down. So hopefully I remember to get back to that. Got some thoughts there too. So I do think let's talk Scrum Master role, right? So my view, my view of the Scrum Master role is that, their primary role in what they're achieving is blocker removal, right? So if a team has a blocker, perhaps they cannot complete one of their stories, their user stories or something like that. I'm going down the Agile world here. Can I assume that we're all in Agile? I hope so. At least we all tell ourselves we are. So, in that role, that's kind of the main jam, right? Is that if your team is blocked, perhaps it's a dependency on another team. They're kind of giving you the runaround. Maybe the other team doesn't, it's not a priority for them and that type of thing. So I think that's the Scrum Master primary assistance, is that allow the devs to keep focusing and perhaps they switch to another task while this is blocked. And they're kind of the bulldozer, right? They're the blocker remover. I think we're also touching on something that's kind of uniquely interesting in our industry, is that some companies, I think, view the Scrum Master as an individual role that has complete agency, and there is an individual who is just a Scrum Master. There's another perspective where Scrum Master is just a hat that you wear. It's not a full individual who just does Scrum Mastering. It's a role that passes amongst the team in a rotation. So that is another solution to the problem that I personally think is more effective. That being said, if the company has the budget to support full-on Scrum Masters, awesome, go for it. That's cool. But I think you actually can fulfill that as a rotational role. So I'm just going to throw that in there. Could ChatGPT replace the blocker removal? Maybe. So maybe, right? Because if it's just communicating with external teams that you're blocked on and trying to escalate priority, sure. I think the problem that I foresee there is this is kind of a humanistic problem, right? Part of clearing blockers may eventually be escalation, right? You may eventually kind of be going to folks' management type of area if you cannot agree on the priority, right? And what I would ask is, so certainly ChatGPT could learn the organizational hierarchy and it could escalate. Now I'm going to put you in the driver's seat of being that manager or that director who's over these 2 different groups. And a bot comes to you and says, so-and-so doesn't agree on priority, blah, 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 blah. Will you give that as much importance, and will you respond to that as equally as you would, another human talking to you about that? Or would this just be kind of like a nanny bot in your mind that is kind of nagging you for these constant issues, sort of a thing, that come through escalation. So you don't have to answer it. I think that's just the question I would pose, maybe just outwardly and externally to the community. I do think ChatGPT could do a decent job over time after it builds enough organizational hierarchy. I think it could do a good job escalating the blockers, resolving them. I think that's dependent on now the other folks, right? And it's kind of up to their perspective on, are they giving the bot the credence that it should represent, you know?
Yeah. So that might be weird at the beginning to get a bot talking to you.
Yeah.
But the thing that I appreciated about GPT is the fact that it can explain things really, really well. If you're a high executive or a high level manager and you're not exactly familiar with the technical details, then you can ask it to phrase the problem to you in a way that you would understand it with your, say, business background. Something that probably humans are not really, some people are full technical and they can't switch or simplify things. Some people are fully business and they can't relate to and I feel like there's a gap, and that's just, part of being a human. You're not 100% able to talk to anybody on any level about anything, but I feel go ahead.
Well, yeah, and if I could jump in just to help out your community who's listening, I would say that is, so coming from about 20 years experience in the field, that's going to be your number one differentiator, by the way. So just a tip for folks who, if this is kind of aimed at more junior engineers and things of that nature, as you're progressing and going through your journey, if I could give you just one tip in your career, your ability to be able to explain complex problems very simply is going to be probably the number one differentiator to how fast you're going to get promoted and how high that you can go. So just a tip, we were on the topic, I thought I'd plug it in there. I would absolutely advise folks to really focus in on that and come up with analogies and simple examples of how you can explain that to other folks. But yeah, so you were saying that ChatGPT does an excellent job of that, right? You were saying that it's really good about being able to explain that to a wide array of experiences and backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, I can show you something if you like. I can share my screen.
Yeah, let's do it. I got you. See, I got githubnext.com.
Okay, so for Copilot, the point that relates to the discussion we were having is personalized content on the fly. So you can ask it basically anything. You could say, so you can go to React documentation, and then there's how do I, my component re-renders too often. And then you get an answer that can be personalized to your experience level, how well you're familiar with the material. And awesome. I think if you could have sliders like this for managers, that's way better than a human.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's great, and I do see that as being a strong niche for ChatGPT, is being able to boil down complex examples into something simpler. And I'll say this is why I said it's a differentiator for you in your career. With as much love as I can muster, engineers as a whole are awful at doing this. They're just awful. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in meetings where there's a broad range of roles. There'll be directors in it, and managers and POs. And there's an engineer sharing code and going on and about all the detail about specifically what the code is doing. And it just breaks my heart that's not holistically known in our community that, hey, you've got these types of roles, and anytime you're delivering a message, you want to make sure that message reaches your entire audience. So if you've got a director, a manager, a PO in your call, probably time to shut the share down on code and just start talking about just use plain English with folks, right? Talk to them, tell them what it's doing in English. Don't talk about the tech, don't talk about the whiz bang. But yeah, I could see this doing an excellent job. I think that's cool. I think the example that we saw here, though, again, I'm gonna be a little bit transparent with my bias here. Dare I say that that's just a pretty Google search UI, right? So let's get something out of the way here, right? Engineers, we have loads of stuff that we have to understand to get our job done, right? Depending on whatever type of problem you're solving, whatever type of thing you're building, there's just so much to know in this field. It is wild, right? And it keeps it's like the universe. It just keeps exploding and expanding over time. And so we all reference Google all the time because you can't memorize everything, right? You have to make conscious decisions about what is most important to keep in my brain and what's stuff that's just simply referenceable quickly out here on the web, right? And I'm gonna give a tip to all you young engineers. Prepare for that. Prepare for you to be more choosy over time, because as you get more to 15 years in the field like me, you start to show your age a little bit. You start to have to be a little bit choosier about what you store in the meat memory. So I will say I think that's helpful because it is irritating for me to have to wade through multiple articles, all the ad jargon, and just scrolling through. Just show me the code. Just show me the code. What is nice about that is I think ChatGPT is doing a better job of just cutting through the minutia and some of the ceremony. It gets you that answer faster. But from my perspective, I'm not impressed yet because it's just a fancy Google search. I'm not saying I don't want it. I want that in my life, right? But I'm referencing tools in terms of like the power they bring, and is it something net new? This isn't something net new, but it is a better way of doing something that we do. So I'm still interested, but I'm not willing to give ChatGPT some, amazing praise of, wow, great job. That's so awesome. Wow. I can't live without it. It's not that I can't live without it. I do want it, but I could live without it. But that's cool. So yeah, so show me more. So what else have you seen about this tool and other things that it can do? I think we were starting to touch on code quality, maybe, right? As it kind of learns a bit of your code base, it can make better decisions about what is poor code and what is good code. And I'll tell you this, being one of the more senior engineers, when you start to review a lot of code, I'd absolutely love any tool that would help with that. I'd absolutely love any tool that could more automatically detect poor code, especially for those junior engineers. I mentioned the two mentality camps. There's the humble engineer. Well, I over here, when I had my hands over here, was kind of the overconfident junior engineer, and then the humble junior engineer. I really think this tool will at least help roughly half of the community. For anybody in that humble category, they'll actually listen. And if this tool actually tells them, hey, based on all of this pattern recognition and our wide array of ML data set, kind of looks like this code tends to not make it through a PR for these types of reasons. You ask me as a senior engineer, hey, Russ, are you interested in commoditizing that so you don't have to leave those types of comments again? Absolutely, absolutely, I'm interested in that. Now it's like, so I'm willing to give ChatGPT a little edge here. I'm going to say that that's kind of new, right? Like, yeah, I could do it. Like, we could have done it before humanly, but I think this is kind of the first time that that's more automatically, right? So before it was comparing a Google search, which was a tech thing, to ChatGPT's tech thing. Now we're comparing a human thing. Humanly, I have to constantly keep reminding folks, this is not good quality. Here's why. And you say it very nicely, right? And it's always in a constructive pattern, but you're saying, hey, we kind of need to adhere to these code standards. Here's why. Hey, this isn't an awesome variable name because it's a character. It's one letter kind of a thing, right? Hey, you've got 10 private functions and one public function in this class. You probably have a code smell, right? Would I love to not have to keep repeating those types of things? Absolutely, because that lets me focus more on what I actually want to be focusing on in the code. The non-commoditized stuff, the new stuff, the more exciting stuff. Let me talk to you about this exciting stuff, this different stuff, instead of just repeating myself over and over and over on these tenets, right? That's the stuff that as a senior engineer, what you want to see your junior engineers do is learn all of those as fast as possible so you can get that code quality up as fast as possible. this could absolutely accelerate that. And that I'm excited about. When I think of Copilot and being able to help developers identify poor code quicker, that I'm excited about. That I think is going to be awesome and kind of leads back to that assistance tool use case that I was talking about originally. This is where I think ChatGPT can shine as that assistance tool. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped about this portion of it. Let's go, baby.
Do you still see my screen? Yeah,
I do. Yep.
So
help me debug the selected code.
Yeah, it can generate tests as well, which is awesome.
Maybe. Okay. Maybe. I have mixed feelings about this. I have some super mixed feelings about this.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because that's a very important topic. And in the interest of time, we have 5 minutes, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So super quick. Do you think we went from assembly code to C, more or less, high level enough? Then we were struggling with no objects. We went to C++. Then we were struggling with no garbage collectors and memory leaks and segmentation faults. And then we went to Java and Python and the likes. And we become more productive as we commoditize, you said, on these tools. However, I feel like there is a balance between being more productive and more stupid. And it might just make us dumb. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. And I think what we're really talking about here is that we have to understand that every single one of these things that we commoditize over time, that they're helpers. But every time that we commoditize something, I think what's most important is that we do fully learn what was just commoditized. It's the same reason where if I'm teaching somebody to code, this will date me a little bit, but if I'm teaching somebody to code and they jump right into an IDE, I'll ask them, have you actually compiled the code like on the command line before? Have you ever done that? Right. And if the answer is no, we just take 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and do it quick. And I show them what they're actually doing behind the scenes so that they can appreciate what that IDE does for them automatically. So what are we really talking about here? The key is that as we move forward, we have to understand that these tools are training wheels that help us. They are helpers. They'll absolutely make us better. But we have to understand that at the end of the day, those training wheels do come off. These tools are intended to keep us, accelerate our learning. But eventually it's going to come down to what do you know? Because you are the processor. We engineers are the mental processor that have to solve the most complex problems. Yes, these will help us commoditize things, but we absolutely have to learn what they're doing under the hood. And we have to understand what they're doing for us automatically before we just take it on, or you miss out on those crucial learning experiences that you understand what's happening. So when I go to that code quality example, I'm excited for that, right? Because I'm assuming that ChatGPT won't just tell you when the code quality is poor, it'll tell you why. And that's why I said for those two camps of junior engineers, it's only going to help those humble junior engineers because they're going to listen to why it's bad. The other group of engineers, they're just going to take the answer and go copy paste, go cool, I got my answer, awesome. And you know what, at the end of your learning journey, when you finally get to the point where all of these commoditized tools don't help you get any further, the folks who are not in that humble camp, the folks who are not in that learning camp where they're not ensuring that they learn every step of the way, the person who gets to that end of the journey and does not have that foundation being built up, they're dead in the water. You're not going anywhere. You're literally just at this point a tool monkey. You can only do what tools do, and that's it. You can just sit there with your hammers and pound on things, but you haven't learned anything to actually solve something complicated. So I would bring it back to, I think the key thing that you're touching on here, the crucial thing, it has to revolve around learning, right?
Would you say the same about a junior engineer using Java and not having a clue on how memory management works?
That's a good question. I would say yes, from the perspective. So I think this is really good because it really toes the line. I could see like multiple fair perspectives here. I do think most engineers could probably get away without understanding the core underlying memory management concepts, but I also think you're going to get into trouble in some cases because what's going to happen is that those folks are going to really kind of fall down when they start looking at how Java passes by reference and passes by value. I'll leave you with a cliffhanger. It doesn't work exactly the way you think it would. So for junior engineers who haven't been down that learning train, it's interesting. So I don't want to give away more for anybody who hasn't kind of learned how that works in Java. I think it's a fun little learning exercise. So it will trip you up. I can think of at least one example where it will trip you up if you don't know it. That being said, I recognize it's a smaller case of what's going to trip you up. You start talking about code quality. If you get to the end of your learning journey and you don't know code quality, you're dead in the water. You're not going anywhere as an engineer. You're useless. I'm going to make some strong statements here. You are useless to the company you're working for. You failed your job. Your job is to learn and get better so that at the end of when you expel all the value that these commodities give you, you're now an efficient, processor that can essentially solve any type of complicated problem. If you haven't reached that, you failed as an engineer. That's what we're here for. That's why we love this field. We like solving complex puzzles, right? So yeah, that's the charge that I would give to folks and help build a little bit of passion for our craft.
So for junior engineers, use GPT, but please know what it's doing. Learn. Don't just copy and paste blindly.
Yeah, and if ChatGPT devs are out there listening to this, please make sure that as answers are being given, the why is included, right? Especially, I understand that ChatGPT started as like a broad scope thing, but when we start looking at Copilot, please, if there are any ChatGPT developers listening, ensure that the why is there. Every other code quality tool that we have out there today gives you the why because they recognize that the value is in learning, right? So that's my charge. Make sure that the why is there. If we just become simplistic copy pasters, you're going to get to the end of this tool's value and you're going to be largely useless. The value that you got out of that tool is pretty limited. It's going to stop there and it actually hurt you, to your point, because it stopped you from learning, prevented you from learning, right?
That's been very interesting, Russ. I know we're running out of time. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, and I hope to see you again on another podcast.
Yeah, you bet. It's fun. We'll do it again.
I learned a lot today. Thank you so much.
Awesome. You're welcome.
Enjoy your Sunday. Talk to you soon.
You too.
Bye-bye.